where narratives of love and passion are presented. We will commence our stimulating exploration of the domain of human relationships, including the phenomenon of love and dislike occurring at first sight. This phenomenon may be attributed to the influence of chemical elements, as I have observed in my professional capacity. I am a member of the middle management team of a hypermarket chain. I do not have any direct reports. My interactions are primarily with external stakeholders. The internal operations of the hypermarket are not within my purview. Consequently, I did not perceive a significant risk in my relationship with the cashier. While I did not conceal it, I did not actively promote my connection with the cashier. Tina, for example, is not my subordinate. However, it was common knowledge that we had been together for a year and were planning to get married. This information did not particularly interest anyone, but women are women. Tina once told one colleague in confidence, then another, and then another in secret. The result was predictably known to the entire female part of the team. If it were not for my fiancé's lack of discretion, our relationship would have remained unnoticed for a long time. Tina arrives at work an hour earlier than me and leaves earlier. Tina is attractive, both her face and figure are good, and our relationship has always been good. We never the two men engaged in frequent sexual intercourse, often arguing about the nature of their relationship. Kit was employed as a warehouse worker, responsible for loading and unloading goods destined for the sales floor. He was perceived as an ordinary individual with a regular face, taller than the author of this account and with broader shoulders. He was noted for his fondness for women and his willingness to make sexual advances towards numerous female colleagues. These advances were perceived as shameless and successful, resulting in the women spending more time with him outside of work. Communication between Kit and his conquests abruptly ceased. This would have been of no consequence had it not been for the fact that Kit took an instant dislike to me. He made it a habit to tease me on every occasion and for any reason. These jabs were not confrontational enough to warrant further attention. He sought to provoke a direct conflict. However, whenever he cracked jokes and made snide remarks in the presence of others, I always felt uncomfortable. As it happens, I know that many others have had similar experiences. In solitude, I have shouted responses to him, and in retrospect, I have come up with sharp retorts that I could have used to embarrass him right then and there. Such sharp comebacks were always formulated much later, after the fact. For example, he could casually remark that my polished shoes indicated a preference for physical exercise that involved bending and brushing them. He could also make comments about my musical taste, eliciting approving laughter from colleagues. In fact, there was one occasion when while engaged in conversation on the telephone, he made a jocular remark to the saleswoman, suggesting that if I were to require the use of the restroom with haste and was concerned about making it in time, adult diapers could be procured from the hygiene department. This remark elicited a fit of laughter from the assembled female personnel, including Tina. I was left to wonder whether I was perhaps too sensitive to his humor. I was tolerant that week. I did not consider it appropriate to respond to his remarks in a serious manner. I felt that attempting to do so would be both awkward and pathetic. I began to avoid crossing paths with him. If he happened to be in my way, I attempted to change direction to avoid him. It would appear that he was aware of my avoidance tactics, as he began to appear in unexpected locations without his customary jests. Consequently, there was no longer any need for me to evade him. I subsequently became aware of his conversations with Tina, which took place in the absence of customers. He proceeded to the sales floor with a cart laden with merchandise. His demeanor suggested a jocular and flirtatious intent, which prompted Tina to laugh and cover her mouth with her fingers, a gesture she had previously employed when we were first acquainted. That evening, I informed Tina that we needed to discuss the covert intimidation tactics Kit was employing. His reputation as a ladies' man and, finally, that he seemed to have set his sights on her, I spoke openly and hoped for understanding. I informed Tina that I was requesting she cease all communication with him. I recognize that my concerns may appear paranoid, but I believe he intends to engage in malicious behavior. I want to emphasize that I do not lack trust. I am aware that you are aware of my feelings towards you and that I trust you completely. However, Kit has already seduced several girls from our store, which leads me to believe that he is attempting to gain some kind of advantage. What is your opinion on this matter? My fiancé looked at me sadly. I love you and I will not allow him any liberties. Do not even consider engaging with him in any way. You have nothing to worry about. She stated that she should be reassured, but it occurred to me that it would be preferable to inform her that she should refrain from communicating with him entirely. The following day, I observed Tina and Kit walking along the main aisle of the store. They were situated at a considerable distance from her department. He was engaged in a verbal exchange with her, and she was exhibiting signs of mirth. I am not a master of the language of gestures, but I have acquired a certain degree of proficiency through the study of marketing literature. Her posture was open and relaxed, her shoes were turned out in a manner that was suggestive, and she pulled her shoulders back, accentuating her large chest with one hand. She held the wrist of the other individual, demonstrating her palm to him. The distance between them was quite friendly, yet at that moment, I clearly understood that she was no longer within my possession. Her pose could be described with one short word: yes. I did not display any indications of interest or attraction, I simply walked by that day. I observed them 3 more times. On each subsequent occasion, I observed them in different parts of the store, but at a considerable distance from her department. Their communication was limited to conversations, and there were no overt displays of physical contact, such as embraces or kisses. However, their poses conveyed clear consent. To observe them more closely, I entered the security room with a bag of premium chips purchased from our store. I informed the security guard that I had changed my mind and purchased a large bag of chips, and now I was unsure of how to proceed. I mentioned that I had seen him eating chips and the guard confirmed that he enjoyed chips. I handed him the bag and mentioned that I was planning. He permitted me to enter the observation room on numerous occasions to monitor customer behavior. I concealed my observations by appearing engrossed in my smartphone. I observed Tina and Kit, noting their interactions were premeditated. I attempted to converse with Tina, but she abruptly terminated the interaction. The conversation rapidly concluded when she explicitly misrepresented the truth, stating that she had not spoken with Kit that day. I was uncertain about how to respond. On the one hand, I could acknowledge her falsehood. However, I was unsure if it was beneficial to do so, given that the boundary had not yet been crossed. Furthermore, if I disclosed my knowledge, there was a possibility that given the possibility that she might become more cunning, I decided to remain silent and simply wait weakly, hoping for that chance. I was not spying on Tina, but I did observe her somewhat when she left for work an hour earlier than me in the morning. I would then proceed to the store and speak with the security personnel in a casual manner. It would be beneficial to mention the early morning customer behavior study and monitor Tina or Kit on the monitors. I attempted to provide her with special care and attention and affection, and discussed the upcoming wedding and the future. On Saturday, she did not return home from work, at least when I returned. An hour after she was scheduled to return, she had not yet done so. She sent a text message indicating that she would be meeting with friends until late at night. I initially understood the situation without direct evidence, but for some reason, I was able to discern the truth. Then, evidence emerged. Keith had sent me a link to a video on his cloud storage platform. I observed her lowering her head below his waist, engaging in intimate attention. Keith then turned his phone camera towards himself, smiled, and showed me the video. I was certain that he was recording this action, especially for me. The video then showed her again, and I saw him flick her nose. She was momentarily distracted by the gesture, raising her gaze to meet his eyes. Her expression was one of mild displeasure, though not to the extent of overt laughter. It was as if she was amused, even delighted, by the teasing, despite her apparent disdain. "Hey, let's watch the video later and reminisce about the good times," he said, his voice laced with affection. The sound of his voice seemed to trigger a spontaneous urge for physical contact, prompting her to lean in for a kiss. It appeared that she was sharing the video with me, although it seemed that she was also showing it to someone else. The video ended, and I was reluctant to leave the scene. I was fascinated by the spectacle and watched until the end. I heard his panting voice, and I was struck by the question of whether I was superior to him. She replied with a laugh, "Are you better than him? I will take care of you at work tomorrow. We will have time before he arrives." She attempted to object, but he struck her lightly on the cheek and stated, "I will decide when and where I engage in sexual activity with you. You are now under my control." This was an unusual sensation. I felt deeply wounded and somewhat ashamed that I had opened the wardrobe and began gathering her clothes about an hour later. I proceeded to transport 3 boxes, containing her personal belongings, to her parents' residence. Upon arrival, I promptly retrieved my belongings and retreated to a concealed location. I awaited the arrival of her father, who was left visibly surprised upon opening the door. I departed, returning home to retrieve the bottle of gin that she had given me a few months prior, which I had not opened until that moment. I was on the verge of uncorking it when a novel idea suddenly occurred to me. After all, tomorrow at work, Kit would likely regard me with disdain, confident that I would not dare to publicly admit that I had become it was equally unlikely that I would engage in a physical altercation with him. In that case, he might boast about his victory to a couple of colleagues, or even show them a video. They would gossip and chuckle, both to those who had evidence and to those who enjoyed rumors. My only option would be to resign and leave the area, but I was already formulating an alternative plan. I turned off my phone and silenced it. The doorbell secured the door with a latch and went to sleep, blocking my ears with makeshift earplugs so I didn't hear the knocking on the door when she returned or her cries. I was unaware of the duration of her struggle to gain access to the apartment. Subsequent reports from neighbors indicated that her hysterics at the door lasted for over an hour until she departed. I was no longer concerned about her whereabouts at that point. She spent the night, and in the morning I arrived at work. I left my car a block away, with a paper bag in hand. I entered the hall and immediately locked eyes with Kit. As expected, he was surrounded by several colleagues, loaders, and saleswomen. They all looked at me with curiosity, some with mocking expressions, some with sympathetic ones. However, curiosity was evident in everyone's gaze. It was evident in everyone's gaze. I lived up to their expectations. Kit expressed joy quite convincingly, or so it seemed to me thanks to you. You saved me. This is for you. Have a drink. You can even share it with my ex. I grinned widely, pulling out a bottle from the bag. Hey, it's not from our store. I brought it from home. All witnesses, Kit. Honestly, I don't know how long I would have hesitated to break. I was troubled by my conscience. How could I have behaved in such a way? She had given me no reason for my actions. If I were to inform her that I am no longer interested in her, I would be perceived as a jerk. Furthermore, when I realized that you were pursuing her, I was afraid of scaring you away. I was pretending not to notice, fearful that you would become aware of my intentions and would no longer want to be involved. I was pleased to see that you were able to navigate the situation with skill and composure. I must admit, I was somewhat taken aback when you mentioned a plan. I had not anticipated that you would be aware of it. I am gratified to hear that I managed to catch you unawares. I had assumed that you were not aware of my intentions. I must admit, I was somewhat surprised when you mentioned a plan. I had not anticipated that you would be aware of it. She is not on my level, as the adage goes. We reside together, yet I have always felt like Michael Jordan competing against a local team. I wanted to withdraw, but I did not want to appear foolish, not in her eyes but in the eyes of those around us. Even here, all of you, I gesture towards the crowd of onlookers who would consider me such a person, and now I have an excellent reason to break up. I have nearly completed the task, and you assisted me in doing so. I observed the spectators, who were attentively following the unfolding drama. Did anyone hear that I am ending the relationship because of her betrayal? No one has the courage to call me a fool. I am ending the relationship for a reason. Laughter erupted, and the women began discussing what had happened. I noticed that Kit's partner was standing. The individual in question was holding his phone in his hand. It had a distinctive themed case, and on the screen was the very video that Kit had sent me the previous day. I then asked the group if everyone had watched the video. I then took Jack's phone and the man released it from his grip. I was excited and my hands trembled as I tapped on the icon and I was unable to locate the folder, and it was not immediately apparent that I had selected multiple files. I proceeded to highlight them, select the Send to All Contacts option, and click OK. I then attempted to buy time, observing the spinning loading circle, and stated, "It's ready," before realizing that something had gone wrong. I then pressed play, and, in a minute, Kit's triumph turned into a The video then transformed my fiancé into my ex-partner. I suddenly realized that, in addition to the video, several other video files had been sent to all of Kit's contacts. The content of these files was unknown to me. I held Kit's phone, displaying the video to everyone. They gazed at it greedily. I then heard several simultaneous gasps. I inquired as to the identity of the video. One of the saleswomen, in a state of evident distress, exclaimed, "Oh my God," as she viewed the video on her phone. My husband and I, along with the other 5 women, were visibly distressed. In a short time, we were all shouting curses at Kit and me. At that moment, the truth became clear. Kit had saved other videos on his cloud, and they were similar to the one currently playing. In addition to his primary interest, Kit also had a penchant for married women. It became evident that he was quite the ladies' man, as it were, seizing every opportunity that arose. What made this particularly intriguing was that, due to the nature of his work, he had contacts with nearly all the store employees and even some of their family members. At this very moment, these family members could be watching the videos. The participants were taken aback to discover new information about their wives and daughters. Even if not everyone had viewed the videos, there was a high probability that someone would inform them about them. I observed my former partner only around noon. She appeared pale, and her eyes were red when our eyes met. I perceived horror in them. It was not directed at me, but at the general circumstances. Everyone avoided her. The aforementioned women, however, exhibited a different reaction. They were visibly distressed by the videos and conveyed this distress to their husbands. The following day, Kit did not present at work. By lunchtime, a rumor had circulated that he had been severely beaten by a group of hooligans. The severity of the injuries was such that it was uncertain whether he would be able to resume work after leaving the hospital. The recovery process for broken bones is often lengthy. Subsequently, several saleswomen arrived at work with a substantial coating of makeup on their faces. However, the makeup proved ineffective in concealing the profound despondency etched upon their countenances, accentuated by the stark shadows beneath their eyes. As we conclude our exploration of the intricacies of human relationships, we urge you to consider subscribing to our content, liking our posts, and sharing them with others. We extend our gratitude for your support and eagerly anticipate your engagement with the next narrative.